Come on and shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight with your award-winning host, Dale Davidson. Dale interviews fascinating guests from top-ranked celebrities to people just like you who have an important story to tell. For more than 15 years, Dale has broadcast every week from the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. He finds the people who really make Las Vegas a one-of-a-kind city and lets the world know just what's happening in this remarkable town. You'll discover why 50 million people visit the entertainment capital of the world every year. Stay tuned for another exciting episode of Las Vegas Tonight.
Welcome to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. You're going to really be glad you tuned in today. We've got a wonderful guest in store for you. His name is Chris F. Walker. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's an MC, which I witnessed just a couple of days ago, and he does a very good job as an MC as well. And he's a former operator in Special Forces in the U.S. Army, and we're going to talk about all of those things because most of all, he's a great Christian man. Thank you for coming on the show, Chris.
Thank you for having me. I want to make one correction, though. I never did get my Green Beret. I was just Special Operations when I worked with them, but I was an intelligence operator.
Oh, an intelligence operator.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
we got to get it right.
Yeah. Well, again, because the Green Berets are very good at what they do, and I have nothing but respect for them. So I don't want to try and steal any glory somewhere.
Okay. How did you end up in the Army? You were young, weren't you?
I was young. Yeah, I was actually 17.
17 years old.
I think the best way to describe why I wound up in the Army was I wanted to. This is going to sound kind of weird because it certainly backfired, but I got so sick of being told what to do by the teachers at school.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get out and get on my own and prove I could kind of mix it up with the best of them. So I joined the Army, where obviously they weren't going to tell me what to do.
Well, you were 17.
I didn't know what I was
doing. What are you going to do?
You got to be careful what you ask for too, because when they walked in and they were like, "Hey, you tested high. What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Oh, and I want to be like James Bond, man." And yeah, you shouldn't say stuff like that because they'll end up putting you towards the intelligence world if that's the case. But I actually loved my time in it. Taught me a lot of great lessons.
Did you? And you were in about 10 years, is that right?
Yeah, I ended up doing, I was in from 2000 to 2004. And then right after the Iraq invasion, kind of got burnt out and tried to separate. But honestly, I actually had some personal things I really was having a hard time.
Yeah.
So I actually went back into the military in 2005, and I stayed again for all the way up until 2010.
Wow. Wow, that's wonderful. Well, thanks for your service.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate it. Let's talk about the young Chris. Where did you grow up? Tell me about siblings and your family, and were you a Christian? All that stuff.
Okay, well, I was born in Denver. But when I was young, and some of my earliest memories actually are in a small town called Elizabeth, Colorado.
I've heard of it, actually.
And, oh, really?
I went to DU.
Oh, okay,
so I
gotcha.
know Colorado.
Yeah,
so
and most people have heard of Elizabeth.
Yeah,
I think we used to say we had one blinking light, so if you blinked along with it, you missed it. But no, it's probably grown by now. It was a great place to grow up, a lot of good small town feedback.
Right, yeah.
But what I will say that, again, the school system was kind of where I had my issues with.
Yeah.
And by about 6th grade, what I had learned was if you were to, and I actually have my sons with me in the studio here, so I'm going to throw myself under the bus here. Yeah, okay,
Aiden and Connor, we're going to be asking you guys what kind of a dad he is.
But so I'm going to tell on myself. So go ahead, guys. Hold on. So Dad's going to tell on himself a little bit. But when I was in school, about 6th grade, I found out by just kind of looking through their outlines that if I just didn't do any of the homework and got A's on all of my tests, including my finals, I would still pass the course. So at that point, I had enough confidence in my own ability to just read the books and answer their questions that I basically just stopped doing homework.
Yeah.
And so most of my school time was spent in the counseling office while they're sitting there going like, why won't you just apply yourself? And
yeah, you have so much potential.
Yeah, and I heard all of that
too, yeah.
So when I was 17, I finally just said, you know what, I'm done with the game. I'm done trying to do any of this. If I can just test out of school, and that's what I did. So I actually went and got a GED. And that's also how I wound up in the regular Army. My original goal was I actually wanted to be a hostage rescue guy, but I didn't know how to get there. So I thought a good place to start would be pararescue with the Air Force. Their job is to rescue shot down pilots.
Right.
But they weren't going to take a 17-year-old with a GED at the time.
Right.
So I went next door to the Army recruiting office, and they said, well, sure, you can join. And I said, how about the reserves? And they said, the only thing that'll take you is active Army, so active Army it is. It's like just lack of options. But I have a sister. We grew up in a home that was a single family home, excuse me, a single mother home rather.
Yeah.
And she was always working, so it was definitely not the childhood everybody wants.
Yeah.
But ultimately, looking back, there was still a lot of love in the home. There was still a lot. We always had food. We always had clothing. So I know being a single mother might be one of the hardest jobs on the planet, but my mom pulled it off.
So it's so demanding.
Yeah.
So demanding.
Yeah.
This is my second marriage, and my wife was a widow, and she raised her son, and I just have nothing but admiration. Working full time, taking care of her boy, and he turned out fine. So maybe there's somebody on the other end who's still watching out for the single moms too. Yeah, that's right. So after you got into the Army, were you a Christian at all?
No. So actually, my walk with faith was something that was very ironic, because my mother had been raised in a very Christian household to the point where her father was actually a pastor.
Okay.
However, early on, there was a lot of hypocrisy that she witnessed of what would be preached versus how they would live their lives.
Yeah.
And it made such a bitter taste for her that she kind of just took her hands off the wheel altogether with my sister and I. So it's not that we didn't know about Christians or Muslims, and there's a lot of Mormons in the Colorado area.
Yes.
And so it's not that we weren't sheltered from them. We were allowed to interact, and certainly if they invited us to church, if we wanted to go, we were allowed. So she just never held anything back. What she just didn't want to do was force anything.
Right.
And she said, if we're going to come to any kind of a faith, it's going to be on our own accord. But what that finally kind of led me down was I ended up becoming a full-fledged atheist. Because what I was seeing was all these different people who were claiming different gods, different reasons, different arguments, and none of them agreed on anything.
Right.
But the only thing they all seemed to agree on was certain things like you shouldn't take things that aren't yours, you shouldn't hurt people without a reason. I mean, there's like the basics were there.
Right.
And so what I kind of basically said was, to me, religion became what you would insert when you were basically too lazy to find truth. And I was the kind of person that said, no, there's always a logical explanation.
Oops. Sorry.
You're good. Got it?
I was going to get my glasses out of the way, and all I succeeded in doing was almost turning the water over. So we're close to perfect here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I ended up. I don't think I even really considered a God relationship or a Christ relationship until I was probably well into my 20s.
Really?
And even then, I usually did it with a very skeptical approach.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually start believing any of it until I was in my 30s.
Did you have an experience that caused you to come to believe?
It's always, everyone wants to say an experience, but what really occurred for me, I was at a stage of life where I had accomplished all my goals worldly, but as far as the return, I wasn't seeing what I should have expected, as far as like, I've done all these things right. So why aren't the certain things falling into place like they're supposed to?
Yeah.
And when everything started really falling apart for me, enters a friend of mine, and I got to give props to if he ever sees this one, Mike, thanks. But he was bold enough to approach me and say, "I'd love to pose a challenge to you."
Really?
And I got to admit, I was a very
So
arrogant.
was a friend of yours?
Yeah. And I'm very arrogant even today. So, but God's humbled me a lot. So where I was then was so different. But what happened was he posed a challenge of, I'd like you to go through the book of Proverbs with me for a chapter every day.
Right.
And every day that I would do that, I was allowed to ask any question I wanted. And he made an interesting promise. He says, I'm not going to answer any of your questions, but whatever your question is, I'll help guide you to where we can find it somewhere else in Scripture. And what I did was I took that as a challenge to say, as an intelligence guy, if I can find contradictions, if I can find two truths that are supposed to be the same, but they aren't the same, those are things I can prove that there's something in here that's either a lie or that something is just out of whack. So what I did was I took it on as a challenge to say, I'm going to finally debunk this whole Bible thing.
Wow.
For myself.
Yeah.
And 30 days went and hadn't really gotten an answer that I was hoping for.
Yeah.
6 months after we started this, the only conclusion I came to was I actually found myself in a ditch. At the time I was in North Dakota, and I'm like middle of nowhere. There's just stars in the sky. I'm out early morning trying to get a jog in. And the only thing I had was this just constant nagging in the back of my head constantly of like everything I could think of to try and debunk the Bible had failed. And it wasn't just one approach, it was all of them.
Yes.
And so some of them I could come to the conclusion that a creator meets the standards. The other ones I would end up saying that the only option left is that there has to have been a creator.
Yes.
So my first actual coming to any kind of a belief of any kind was just to believe that there is a God.
Yes.
And what was really shocking to me was how fast it dominoed after that. As soon as there's a God, the questions now are like, okay, well then is he the right God? Because everybody has all these different gods. Which one makes him right? And you had to go do that through that rabbit hole. And if that's the case, then is Christ really the person that is his son come down incarnate? And if that's the case, can we prove that he existed?
Right.
And I didn't even know it, but I was basically taking like the C.S. Lewis or the Lee Strobel walk.
Yeah, you sure were. I was thinking of Lee Strobel.
Yeah, exactly. And
it's
it's shocking too for me because when this all finally occurred, I didn't know who any of these guys were.
Yeah.
That wasn't my world. So and I think in a way God probably did that to me on purpose, because if I had heard it from other people, I would have probably seen it as a bias.
Right.
But because I was the one who had to do all the navigating myself,
You discovered it.
I discovered it. And for me, that's what solidified it.
Yeah.
And so, eventually I did finally say, holy crap, not only is I think there's a God, but I think that this Christ is real, and I think his reincarnation I think that his coming to life after 3 days, I think that's real. And you're like, these are all things that I used to think of like, we know it's impossible because science proves that you can't do these things. And now here I am doing a complete 180.
So at that point in your 30s, did you really feel that you could live the Christian life and all your doubts were gone and everything got easy?
Are you kidding? I don't think that's.
I know better.
Yeah, I know that. That's a loaded question. You already know the answer to. Everything changed because now, if there's a God and he's real and he actually has authority on things, that means I don't answer to me anymore. I got to answer to him. And when I start saying, well, if I judge me by those standards, I got a problem.
Yeah.
And what was shocking to me was that's what kind of woke me up, that it's the same problem everybody has. But that's the whole reason of why Christ had to come in the first place, was it's a problem that all of us have, but none of us can solve.
Yeah, yeah. And we tend to, at least until we're Christians, and often after we're Christians, believe that since we're okay people, since, we're not murderers, we're not adulterers, we're not whatever we're not doing at the moment, we ought to earn our way into heaven. But we absolutely are pretty dark. Yeah. Our souls are pretty dark, and it's a hard thing to accept. But without Jesus, we ain't going to heaven. It's that simple, isn't it?
I am the way and the truth and the light.
Yeah.
He's the only way.
Yeah.
And the best way I've ever learned to describe it would be that if you were at the bottom of the ocean with one breath in your lungs, you can swim as hard as you want. You're not going to make it to the top.
You're never gonna break
But
through.
if somebody who's already up there can send a line down to you and help start pulling you out, not only do you have life all the way through, but you'll reach the surface.
I like
but
that.
That's something that you got to hold on to it.
That's a nice metaphor.
Yeah, it's the only way I finally came to understand it, that it's not about my goods or my bads.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So once you were mustered out of the Army, what did you do?
Well, actually, I started doing teaching. I was doing an instructor kind of role. At the time, I took a lot of the skills I had been doing, so I started teaching firearms and tactics. And I would even sometimes do some counterintelligence work for corporate espionage and things like that. All this stuff that everybody thinks is cool. And usually it's just a matter of research is what it really does, is just being able to dig down and find things. But I kind of got my start with that and then rolled into it. And that's where I think it was kind of the tail end of all of that, was what did finally set the motion of like, hey, this is going in the wrong direction.
And you really wanted to know what God had in store for you, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Were you praying for discernment?
Actually, even prayer was something that was very hard for me.
Yeah, it often is.
Because, it's you're talking to someone who you're not face to face with. It's easier to have a conversation when the guy can respond. And in fact, my very first book I ever wrote was, in a way, I guess, my first attempt at prayer. What I needed to have was a conversation with Christ, but I didn't know how to do it. And so all of my research is done, and I finally say, okay, I think there's this Christ, but I've got to really look at how is my life and his life going to actually meld together so that I can do this Christian walk.
Yes.
But that means I got a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And so my first book was actually me fictionally writing, what would that conversation look like if he and I, with just like this, if we had been in this room together, how would I have that conversation? And that was the first book I ever wrote.
That's wonderful. We're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, I want to talk about your books, talk about your speaking career, and also the future, you know, what you intend to do. Boy, this has been a great visit with Chris F. Walker so far, and I know it's going to be even better. So please stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Dale Davidson, host of Las Vegas Tonight. You know, radio has an enduring place in the heart of America. Sometimes it's music that can enliven your spirit or keep you company when you need some. More often for me, it's just been the right spoken word or two that can quiet my mind and soul. Radio brings me a reassuring word in the quiet of night or a welcoming voice early in the morning as I shake off the night's sleep and find my way into God's purpose for my day. And always, I find the best radio station is the one that brings me the best news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. My favorite radio station is KKVV in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's still right where it's been for years, at 1060 on the AM dial, hovering over Sin City like a gospel airship, broadcasting the good news of the abounding love that Jesus Christ has for every single one of us. No matter who you are or where you live, you can receive God's Word via the KKVV Gospel Airship. Just go to kkvv.com and click on Listen Live. KKVV is using all the tools that God's provided them, like podcasting and video streaming and video on demand, to produce programs that lift up our fellow believers and save the lost. If you feel a calling to speak to others about Jesus Christ on your very own show, pick up the phone and call the station. They'll be happy to tell you how. Call KKVV today at 702-731-5588 or drop them an email at kkvvradio@hotmail.com. Please join me in becoming part of the KKVV family. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. I'm your host, Dale Davidson. We are thrilled to have with us Chris F. Walker, author, speaker, teacher. He does it all. And he's here with us today, and we're questioning him closely and enjoying it very much. So let's pick up where we were. You were kind of done with your counterintelligence. The corporate world really wasn't your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what then? What revelation did you have?
Well, what happened was the first book got published. When I wrote the first book, I didn't write it as a book.
Yeah.
As I said, I was just trying to work through if Christ is real, how do I have those kinds of conversations?
Yeah.
Because I hadn't learned prayer very well yet, and I was really trying to just still dive into it.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine got a hold of the script, and he was reading it at one point, and he starts getting teary-eyed about certain elements, and
Yeah.
I walk in, he's on my laptop, and I'm sitting there going like, what's the matter? It's like, I thought you were checking your emails. Is your dog died or something? You look really, she just looks up and he goes, did you write this? What are you reading? It's like, I don't know.
Why do you ask?
I have. Intelligence taught me really quick. You don't just jump into the yes answers. Sometimes you got to see what's going on in their mind before you commit to something. But anyway, he finally said, this is really heavy stuff, and you should probably consider sending this in. But I'm not that guy. I'm a firearms instructor. I do all this other stuff. So this is my world. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And so finally, he convinced me to send it in. And my answer was kind of like, okay, if I send it in and they reject it, we're good.
Yeah,
right?
we tried.
Right,
Yeah.
we tried, okay, there.
Yeah.
And that way I can say it wasn't an issue. What I wasn't expecting was it got picked up.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
there was a problem, though, that I had.
What's that?
I had a very personal conversation with Christ in this thing. So I actually had to go back and say, you know what? Some of these things are actually so personal. Even some of the things that I had mentioned that had to do with government work, it's like, I can't say some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually had to go back and rewrite it.
Yeah.
And make it more generalized, but still keep the content and keep the stories the same so that the lessons can be learned. And then that's also where my name actually came from. Chris F. Walker, my real name's Alex, but Chris F. Walker came around as another layer of anonymity just to try and help with that level.
Oh, I see.
And so
that's why you did it.
Yeah, so what I did was I took my, it is still my name, my middle name is Christopher.
Yeah.
And when I was doing some of the Greek study and when I was doing some of the Old Testament versus New Testament, just for fun, I looked up the names. So Alexander is actually defender of men, or someone who's someone who will step in front of to guard. It was a guardian kind of name.
Alexander the Great.
Exactly. And then the other one was Christopher, is actually he who walks with Christ.
Wow.
And so when I found this out, I called up my mom. I was just like, hey, did you know you actually named me my life's course? Like, I went to the Army first, and then I became someone who follows Christ.
That's great.
And of course, my mom, being as humble and kind as she is, she goes, well, that was the plan, So. But it was actually a lot of fun.
That's great.
But so what I did was I took the name Christian Faith Walker, and I shortened it down. And
I like that.
I did actually have a kind of a Romans or a Road to Damascus Paul kind of encounter.
Really? Tell me
which
about
really
it.
set that. Well, that was what happened in North Dakota. The night that I was getting, or the morning I was getting up to go running, I was still in pretty good shape at the time. So for me, 2 or 3 miles wouldn't have been that big a deal. I made it about a quarter of a mile. I'm starting to feel just overly fatigued, really run down. Starting to think maybe it's just I had a bad diet and I can just push through. That mentality of it doesn't matter, I can push through this. And I got so lightheaded and so weak that I actually I went over to the side of the road, and I finally just had to kneel down because I wasn't able to stand anymore. I was going to fall. And as I got to my knees, I was thinking, okay, I'll just catch my breath, I'll be okay. And I didn't. I ended up actually falling full-fledged onto my back, and I couldn't really do much anymore. It's like I'd lost all my strength.
You couldn't move.
And I was really getting scared because I didn't know what was going on. But what was shocking was it was really cold at the time because we were just coming out of winter, and I feel like I'm on fire. From the inside out, just felt like everything was burning, and it was horrible to experience. I can't tell you the pain I was actually in at this time.
Wow.
And the only thing I could think of was, since I'm on a road, but it's dark out here and it's still, I don't have my people won't see me if I'm just laying down on the ground, was I got 2 choices, which is either try and roll into the ditch to make sure I don't get ran over by a car if it does come by, or chance it and hope that they see me.
Yeah.
And for some reason, my choice that I made was I'm going to roll into the ditch. And I always had learned that wherever your head goes, the body follows. So I just kept telling myself, put your head in the ditch, put your head in the ditch. Finally rolled, and I don't remember much after that. I did get into the ditch, but when I woke up, it was now broad daylight.
You passed out.
Yeah. And I don't know how long I was out for. But I woke up, it was broad daylight now. I did hear a car come by, and that's what kind of woke me up. And I had to, step by step, kind of recover myself. I had to tell myself, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is wiggle a finger. The next thing I'm going to do is wiggle my toes. I had to reset myself.
Yeah.
But what was so shocking was when I had come to, it was as though all of the questions that I had about if this God is real were now, not only is he real, but he's actually a big part of what's going on right now.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to even respond to it. So all I could do was kind of walk my way back. And I asked for the rest of the day off from the job I was doing at the time. And I just spent the rest of that day in the Bible. Because I said, there's something here, and I don't know what that just was, but the only thing I can say is afterwards.
Did your strength come right back to you?
It did once I finally got on the road and started walking.
Oh,
it finally started coming again.
Okay.
But what was really shocking to me was, one, I had never experienced anything like this before.
Yeah.
But 2, the world looked different. I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there was a different set of eyes that I was looking through now.
Yeah.
And it didn't change any of the problems. It didn't change any of the, but what I knew now was I had a different perspective. Like something had changed in me that was now going to look at a different way of how this is going to work. And that's where my real study said of, okay, not only do I believe there's a God, and I also think that this Christ thing might be real, but now it was like, I think I need to actually give this all of me. Like I need to really dive into what this is, what this means.
Yeah.
And so and it was shortly after that I wrote my first book.
Yeah.
So that and that's where a lot of people ended up saying, they kind of compare me. I get compared to Paul, which I keep saying I hope not, because I've seen his ministry. You know, I don't want to get stoned and thrown in prison and all that stuff. But
thrown in the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. But
beaten with rods.
From the Saul to Paul moment, I believe that actually happened exactly how he described it, because I almost had something that's
a road to Damascus experience.
Yeah, and I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah, that's the Holy Spirit.
It was intense.
Yeah. What's the name of your first book?
That one I wrote called The Path. Every journey begins with the first step.
Okay.
And
tell me the names of the other books.
Well, the other book I wrote one that was a little bit less fictional and story-based and a little bit more factual, just like kind of cause and effect. When I wrote that one, I called it The Life Question, and then I called it Accidental Success by Design, because everybody always seems to think that people who put these practices into place, they just seem to get lucky, or that was an accident, or they were the right time, right place.
Yeah.
But they don't realize all the effort, all the stuff that went into it, so that when the moment was right, they were prepared.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole point of that book is once I started saying, hey, if this God is real, and if Jesus is real, then how do we actually look at life? Because I hadn't looked at life that way before.
Ever.
And so I went through, and step by step, I said, okay, you know, what's the foundation we should have? How do we build a good structure for ourselves? What kind of relationships should we do? Is it, what's the difference between grace versus justice? Because sometimes justice is needed, sometimes grace is needed.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate all that? Well, that was why I sat down to write that book, because, and actually, I do, like I said, my boy, I'm glad my boys are here with me tonight, but I wrote it specifically for them to say, guys, Dad did so many things wrong that I'm going to tell you now, with experience, this is the right way to do that. This is the right way to do that. And just break it down into the smaller areas. And then finally, towards the end of the book, I try to explain how they all work together, which I think gets missed a lot. I even tell people that there's a lot of people out there who are selling like a chapter of my book and turning it into a whole book of their own. And then, I mean, it's not like I have a patent on this, because again, everything I did came out of biblical study, philosophical study, and historical study.
Right.
And that was the whole point of writing that, was I said, if it's true, it's going to show up in all of these as true, and they did. But the one that was always shocking to me was the one that was always constant was the Bible.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote that one. Was The Life Question was just kind of as a, I guess, try to say, I'm going to get you the jump start that I didn't have.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then finally I did some other work too. I got to do, when we did the pandemic, I sat down and did a whole video training series about like small business and doing some entrepreneurship, because I kind of feel that a lot of the bigger corporations were able to capitalize on the shutdown, where the smaller mom and pops obviously had to shut down. And I think
which was a shame.
It's So I think what's needed now is we're going to need to see a lot of the small businesses really rekindling. We need to get that entrepreneurial spirit fired again.
Good.
And so I wanted to do a whole training segment of what does that look like? If you've never done it but you have the desire, what are the things you're going to need? So I developed that called Inside the Pyramid.
Okay.
And I based that off of the pyramid on the $1 bill.
Oh, yeah.
Because the big eye that's up there looking down, I was just like, well, you know, from the view.
Everybody has a theory about that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Illuminati, it could be all this.
Yeah.
But the one thing that is true about it is, remove all the conspiracy theories and just say, if you're the eyeball who is looking out from the pyramid, you've got it all figured out, you're in control of all of it.
Right.
What does it look like to you?
Yes.
And that's why I was calling it Inside the Pyramid. It's just from the view from the people who've done this, know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to do that series. And then I actually, a while back, when I was doing some work for some of the correctional facilities up north, I wanted to build something that was just kind of I guess self-help would be a good way to put it.
Yeah.
But I developed a program called Naked Success.
I saw that in your. That's a great title.
And well, it catches people's eyes.
In the title, yeah.
Well, one of the things but the reason why I said that was, the truth is, everybody's born with what they need.
Yeah.
And you're born naked.
Yeah.
So it's not the lack of money or the lack of contacts or whatever. What it is it's the defeatism that's already in you.
Yeah.
How do we get rid of that? And then once we get rid of that, how do you build some good practices and disciplines just so you can have a good structure? And the whole point of that is not even to tell people how to live a good life. It's just, how do you get yourself ready so you can do whatever you want to do with life?
Yeah. How can people get your resources?
They can visit us on chrisfwalker.com. They're all there. I have another, the Life Question's actually getting ready to have a second edition dropped, and that's going to be landing. Okay. So it'll be in all the book sales. You know, I don't know where that's going to be at. And then the Path, is still available through Amazon as well.
Oh,
but
okay.
If you just go to chrisfwalker.com, you'll find all of
How
them.
many books total have you written?
I've written and finished 2. I am working right now on my 3rd, which is, of course, the one that everybody's always bugged me to write, which is, all these stories I'm kind of sharing with you. I never
Yeah.
wrote them.
Oh, you never told anybody.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm only finally now kind of coming out of my shell,
Yeah.
saying, all the stuff that happened that actually led to me doing the work I did.
Yeah.
I've kind of guarded that and then just kind of shared the work, but
Yeah.
it's the testimony itself that I'm finally sharing. So.
Well, people want to hear that.
Yeah.
Because you're a living example of somebody who has come to Christ and come to success, and they often don't. They seem to not relate sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think people wonder about that sometimes. If they come to Christ, they've had some tough times. They came out of a difficult job or a divorce or a crime or you name it. Various things have happened, and they realize the importance of coming to Christ, but they wonder why things don't get rosy right away.
Right.
What do you say to people who come up to you and ask you that question?
Ooh, you know what?
That's a tough one, I know.
You know what? I think the best one I would give for that is an actual story where I put it to the test. Shortly after writing my first book, and before it actually got picked up and published, I did make it back to here in Vegas where we were living at the time. But home life was very difficult. The marriage had fallen apart. We were financially in a lot of trouble at the time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of kind of background issues, but like you said is, now that I have Christ, I'm sitting here going, okay, I know I have these issues, but what I need now is I need solutions.
Yeah.
And how am I going to handle this while still navigating the biblical waters? So what I did was I started trying to dig deeper, just because what I said was I wanted to look at the whole picture first. So all the different areas that had been problems, I wanted to really know what was causing them, and dove into it. And in the process, what I identified was actually a certain individual who had done some very wrong things to me in the background that were in fact now causing a lot of issues at home.
Yeah.
And it was so much of a hatred towards this person for the things he'd done that I finally, even though I had just met Christ, I'm finally, saying I got this Christian walk thing going, I still reverted back to my old habits and just said, you know what, this guy is so guilty of everything that he's done that I am now fixated that I'm going to remove him from this world altogether.
Yeah.
I started planning out how I was going to
Kill him.
pull this off.
Yeah.
How am I going to get rid of the evidence? How am I going to create an alibi? And I planned it out. To give you an idea of how quick I was trying to make this happen, I think I probably found out about confirmation of who this individual was. I had all I needed on him to enact a plan within maybe 24 hours.
Wow.
I even pulled out then the cash I was going to need to start the plan, but there was a timetable. I was about an hour and a half ahead of my timetable, and I needed to not be at the house. So what I did was I pulled into a parking lot where I've been at that parking lot hundreds of times before because it's just a grocery store.
Right.
But I'd never seen a homeless person in there before. And even though I've been to that place multiple times since, I've still never seen a homeless person in that parking lot. But today, on that day, I pulled in just trying to kill some time, park far enough away from security cameras to make sure that they have a hard time identifying me or anything like that. But he's sitting over here next to me. And I'm sitting there going through the motions in my head. This is what I'm going to do. This is the next step. This is what I'm going to do. This is the next step. This is what I'm going to do. This is the next step.
Chris, I hate to interrupt at this critical moment,
Okay.
But we've got to take a break.
No problem.
I'm okay with leaving him hanging. How about you? We're going to be back, and Chris F. Walker is going to finish this incredible story right after this.
Have you been feeling anxious or weighed down recently? Maybe you're struggling with depression and you don't know where else to turn. It's normal to feel sad when life doesn't meet our expectations. And if that's you, I'm here to let you know that whatever's going on, you don't have to feel alone, and there is hope. The good news is that through a relationship with Jesus, you can find rest from what's troubling you. He loves you and wants to carry your burdens and your emptiness. He can help you with your sleepless nights and the things that rob you of joy. So go ahead and stop listening to me and click to send us a message. Tell us about what's going on in your life, and we'll connect you to someone who wants to talk with you. and explain the difference that Jesus can make. Because with Jesus, you can truly feel free from your anxiety.
Welcome back to Las Vegas Tonight. We have a terrific guest. I've been fascinated, and if you've watched the first two segments, I'm sure you have been too. Chris F. Walker is his name, and he's in the middle of a fascinating story. I'll shut up. What happened?
So yeah, where were we? I think we had I pulled into the parking lot with the homeless guy.
Yeah.
I've basically committed in my heart already that I'm going to execute this plan and remove this individual. But I already know it's the wrong reasons. I know all my motives are wrong. Because after all the studies I've done, I can prove this is the wrong reason. So what's weird is I start having this real battle going on of these are the kinds of things that I was trained to do. These are the kinds of things, you know, when you have the bad guy and you get the target, your job is to find them. Right. And so here I am going, well, this guy's bad. You know, obviously, to me anyway, because all the things he's done, I can prove he did it. And you know, unfortunately, he actually never even knew he never knew I was coming either. That was how I wanted it. So
yes,
I pull into this parking lot and I've got this homeless guy there. And every time I'm trying to like go through the plan, I start getting this weird fog. Like it's really hard to concentrate. And then I just look at this homeless guy and all I'm thinking about is him. And then I'm trying to no, I got to stay focused on my plan. And then I see the homeless guy and it's him. And finally, what I finally did was I said, you know what? If this prayer stuff is real, if this God is real, this is going to be my shot to kind of put him to the test.
Right.
And, you know, that's dangerous waters because, you know, even Jesus says, who are you to put God to the test? And I did.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here.
We do that. We do that
so I sat there and I'm out loud in my car having this conversation saying, you know, God, if you're real and you're really up there, you already know what I'm about to do and you know how I'm going to do it and everything else. You tell me what it is you're going to do with this to turn it good and everything. Basically saying, I'm about to do this and then I'll hand it over to you and you can fix it afterwards. But what I started getting was this constant draw towards the homeless guy. And finally I'm starting to have a conversation where it's the first time where I'm not hearing the audible words, but I know the answers. I'm saying the question, but the answers are coming in sometimes even faster before I can even finish the question. Okay, fine. What does he want me to do? Okay, I'm supposed to give that guy some money. And no, you know, that's not my plan. I've got something going on. I've already budgeted out my execution of this plan. I'm not going to give this guy any money. No. And every time I'm trying to argue, I'm feeling it more and more of, you need to do this. And so then I start negotiating. Okay, I'll tell you what. How about I give him $20? And I'm starting to already think in my head, if I lose $20, here's where I can make a difference here and try to save it and make the plan still work. Before I can even get it out, no. Okay, how about 50? But no. How about I give him Benjamin? I'll give him a whole $100 and it's gonna. No. So I finally posed the question. I said, God, if this is what you want me to do, fine. You tell me how much you want me to give him. And the answer defeated me so harshly because it was all of it.
Give him all of it.
Which I knew that meant I was not going to get to do what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I wrestled with it for a while.
I'll bet you did.
I'm sitting there going, no, because, you know, first off, we're already hurting financially. And when I'm saying, God, we're already broke, I'm not going to give all this money to a homeless person. And his answer is like, well, you seem to have no problem with using it for what you're going to do. And I can't argue with that.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay, that's true. So it's just one after one of all of my things. It's just he's doing that stern father.
Yeah.
This is what I said. Are you going to do it? Yes or no?
Yeah.
And so I finally took that leap of faith and said, this means that everything's going to fall apart and I'm not going to have any say in it. So I'm going to trust you this time to say, okay, because I've seen enough now to think that you're real. And this is, I guess, my moment of stepping out on the boat kind of thing. So
right.
I go up and I'm walking up to hand the guy the money. And he is just blown away. He's actually defensive. That much money coming at him, he's like, I can't take that, it's too much. Is there something I can do for you? I'd like to work for it. He's trying everything he can to say, that's too much money.
Right.
And I couldn't even find words because I'm fighting off so many emotions, but finally all I could get out was I said, I need you to take it. Because I think you're saving me more than I'm saving you.
Wow.
So he took it, and I was still able to hold my composure for a little bit, started walking away, and all he said was, God bless you. I broke down. That's all I took.
Yeah.
So I got in the car, and for the next hour and a half, I was sitting there just angry and arguing, and I was actually having a...
Yes.
My son.
Oh, that's sweet.
Right, bud, thanks.
That's sweet. Thanks for hugging your dad.
Thank you.
When we close the show out, you're going to get to meet the other one.
But
That's sweet.
yeah, it's hard to finally let these things go. But, you know, again, this is what I finally said I was going to write my next book about. But, yeah, I'm sharing these stories because the reason I share this was that everything did fall apart.
Yeah.
The marriage did fail.
Yeah.
The house, I did have to move out. We had to start working on court battles. I mean,
Right.
everything that can go wrong did.
Right.
But I said that I committed to I was going to do it his way. And now here I am years later.
Yeah.
I mean, I get to share the story. I got to go MC the first Christian Influence Convention that ever took place yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, it was great.
And
too.
it was good. Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. I get to meet different people, different authors. Now I'm sitting there going like, I can't believe the life I have. And if I had done what I was going to do,
Yeah.
I don't know what that life was going to be, but I know it's not what I have.
Yes. Yes.
And what I have now is more than I ever dreamt of. So
Yes.
all I can say, that's why when you asked the question, I said the best thing I can do is just give an example. It's hard to step out in faith,
Yes.
especially because God doesn't work in our microwave kind of mentality.
No.
You do this, obviously there it's done. He's not a magic genie in a bottle.
Right.
But if you'll listen to what his prompts are, if you'll stay true to him throughout the long term, what you're going to see along the way is he's got a design. He's got something planned.
Yeah.
And he'll make sure that it works, but you got to keep your trust in him and him alone.
Wow. Wow, that's a wonderful story. Chris, thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I knew it was hard, but you know, it's such a great example. We have millions of viewers. We have people all over the world, and they say, well, what does this Christ thing mean? You know, okay, it's a book. That's a good thing. You know, there's some good music. You know, it's a place to go on Sunday, you know, but it's so much more than that. You know, if you give your life up to him, which you obviously have done, starting with that moment, it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
And you have fun.
Yeah.
Too. That's the other thing.
You do.
You know, people don't want to give up their sins either, you know, because I'd rather go to hell where there's a party. Let me tell you, there's no party going on in hell.
That's true.
You know, there really isn't. Yeah. And then where now? Let's talk about the future.
Okay.
Well, what do you want to do from now on? I know you're doing a lot of speaking.
Yeah, I'm trying to get. I actually recently even got signed with my speaking agent is Bruce Marins.
Yeah,
he's
mine
one of the,
too. He's mine too. Yeah,
he's one of the best in the world. So
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I'm doing something right to attract that guy.
Yeah.
And got the books are starting to pick up again, and then like I said, I'm writing my third now. But ultimately, my main goal is I want to make sure that I develop something that I can hand off to my sons.
Yeah.
And encourage them, not through my words, but also through my life and through my actions, to say this is how we live a godly life.
Yeah.
And point them to him more than me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to make sure I get done is there's so much power in testimony, and so many people are afraid to share it.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially with the shutdown, seclusion became a big issue. So I'm really trying
It
to...
has psychological ramifications. Yeah.
And so I want to really try and ignite to remind people that, Christ is not something that's a good idea. He is a person that will help you through your struggles if you will just listen.
Yes.
And he's hard to hear. You know, I'm not
Sure
going to...
is.
You know, there's a lot of times where he's quiet altogether, and that drives me nuts, too. I need
asked
an
you
answer.
a question. Now would be good.
Yeah, anytime for that answer, I'll take it. But yeah, you calm down. You kind of learn to slow down a little bit. And what I love the most about my future now is that I don't know what it is, but I know who's got the helm, And I know that all I get to do along the way is enjoy it.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I just get to spend time with my boys. I get to, I am remarried. I have a great marriage now.
Congratulations.
In fact, I have another son because of that. I have she had a child beforehand, and he wasn't here today, but I have a third son.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I
I have
can't
one
tell
of
you the
those too.
blessings.
I call him my bonus son.
Your bonus son. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't say he's my stepson. He's my bonus son. All of a sudden, I had 4. I had 3, like you did, and then I had a 4th. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So but yeah, with the speaking, I just want to make sure that everything I do, again, I just try to really pray the Psalms. I think it's 119, but let the meditations of my heart and the words of my mouth be acceptable in your sight, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Yeah. And the rest of that is just, okay, I think basically I'm okay now. So what is it you want me to do is really the big question.
Yeah.
And he's given me platforms to work with. He's given me a new network of just people, and I can't even tell you. There's no way I would have met any of these people before.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to see what happens.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. And I want to reiterate that the Christian Influencers Convention, which was run by a couple of friends of ours, and they were really smart to bring you on as the MC. You did a great job.
Yeah, Brian was an amazing guy, and actually, I think you got to interview him too.
Yeah, I've had Brian on the show.
He's been working on putting that together for 10 years.
Wow.
So that was just amazing that, a decade's worth of prayer and discipline and hope came to fruition, and I got to be part of it. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and he was so touched.
Yeah.
At the end in particular, and a mutual friend of ours came to Christ.
Yeah.
During the event, and that's the kind of thing that you could do far worse to devote your life to that.
Amen.
Do those kinds of things all the time.
Yeah.
And I often pray that Vegas will be the venue for that to be, that it really will be Faith City instead of Sin City.
And I think that where sin abounds, grace abounds more is actually lived out very well by the community here that does have it. But I think that we can do better than just the community that's here. We can reach the world.
Oh, I think so.
Right from here. We can do it.
Yeah. Chris, we've got about 3 minutes left. I want to turn the show over to you. I threatened you during the break and said I was going to do this. But we have millions of viewers all over the world. Many have tuned in for the first time. They may or may not even know the name of Christ. Talk to them about why they should come to Jesus, whatever way the Holy Spirit leads.
Well, I think the best advice I could give any one of you is if you have questions, good. Yeah, it's okay to doubt. It's okay to have questions. The only thing that's bad is to not seek the truth. Don't settle for just an answer. Make sure it's the answer. Find out, verify, dig deeper. I think as one of the ways I said it was, you should never be content, always dig deeper. And when it comes to the pursuit of truth, never stop. Because only when you finally find bedrock truth will you find the source. And the source always points to one place. That one place is our Father. And then as you start learning who He is, you'll learn about how much He loved us enough to be able to send down that lifeline into the depths of the oceans that we can take hold of. And it's not about how hard we swim. It's not about how smart we were. It's not about how much distance we think it is between us and the ocean. The only thing that matters is that you take hold of that lifeline and never let go while it pulls you out. Trust it with all you got, and He'll never leave you astray.
Oh, God bless you, Chris. Thank you.
God bless you.
That's wonderful. Well, we got a couple of minutes here. Bring these young men up here.
Come on, guys. All right.
That's it. Stand next to your dad.
Hi, boys. So this one is.
Are they both in the shot here? Okay, make sure. Yeah, look at the middle camera here.
Right over there, boy.
Yeah, and tell everybody who you are.
Go ahead, Aiden.
Hi, I'm Aiden, and this is my dad.
That's Aiden, and he loves his dad. And you are?
Connor.
Connor?
My boy Connor.
How old are you guys?
12 and 10.
12 and 10. And tell us why you love your dad so much.
Because he is the king.
He is the king.
You had to pull that out.
I like that. Connor, you want to add anything more?
No, I already saw it.
Okay. Okay. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for all of you for coming over with your daddy. And
For father.
That's right. Make him feed you. Make him take you out.
I'll go get some food after this.
I have been told.
Yeah.
He had a pet dinosaur.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
I'm
he
not
is.
that old now.
There's a happy family.
bad.
There's a happy
Too
family.
bad you still have a dinosaur.
There you go. A wonderful family.
Thank you so much. Dave.
Thank you. You bet.
God bless.
God bless you all. And thank you for watching Las Vegas Tonight. Feel free to give me a call anytime, 702-480-3989. And make sure that you check in with Chris and buy his books. Invite him to be a speaker. Keep in touch with this great man of God. As I try to remember to say each and every episode of Las Vegas Tonight, when it comes to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, please walk with him. Right, guys?
Amen.
There you go. There you go.
Yay.
There you go. God bless you all.
When you've tried all you can to accomplish your plan, there's one thing left to do. You can still stand tall with your back against the wall. Yes, I have learned. You gotta keep your head up high, keep on looking toward the sky. Praising the Lord. Don't you ever say you can't. You got a mighty hand. Praising the Lord. Praising the Lord. If you ever lose sight of the road to the light, there's one who can lead. You've got a guiding hand to that promised land. You'll never be in need. You gotta keep your head up high, keep on looking toward the sky. Praising the Lord. Don't you ever say you can't. You got a mighty hand. Praising the Lord. Praising the Lord. Better not disguise foolish fears as wise. Winners are the ones who try. You gotta keep your head up high, keep on looking toward the sky. Praising the Lord. Don't you ever say you can't. You've got a mighty hand. Praising the Lord. You gotta keep your head up high, keep on looking for the sky. Praising the Lord. Don't you ever say you can't. You've got a mighty hand. Praising the Lord. Praising the Lord.
Across the ages, humanity is often gathered in prayer, especially in times of crisis and need. It's a natural response, but who are we speaking to? Is prayer merely a platitude or emotional cliche?
Yahoo!
Or is there a God on the other end of the line? And if so, can we speak to him? And what is he saying? What exactly is prayer? Theologian John Piper describes prayer as intentionally conveying a message to God. He also outlines three main approaches to prayer, which each depend on how you view God. If your perspective is that God is in everything and everything is God, including you, me, the sunrise, the humpback whale, the smoke lightly wafting from a sun, well, you get the picture. Prayer from this perspective is all about connecting with the divinity within us and around us. The only problem is that if we are part of God, prayer can feel like a one-sided conversation. If you feel like God exists, but he's distant and unapproachable, then prayer can become about developing special techniques or higher levels of devotion and holiness in order for our words to reach God's ears. Hello. Or we just give up trying. However, when you read the Christian Bible, God shows himself not to be distant or silent, but to be personable, accessible, and a creator who speaks. In the creation story, we see him literally speak each created thing into existence, as if to open an external conversation with his creation.
Howdy.
And throughout the Bible, he consistently speaks to humanity. So if God speaks,
Ciao.
how do we speak to him? A big part of God's conversation with humanity was the person of Jesus, who God sent to earth as the human manifestation of himself.
Thank you very much.
So that he could talk to us directly. The Bible literally refers to Jesus as the Word, God's Word. And he gave a direct answer when his friends asked him about how to speak to God. Jesus says prayer is simply and honestly talking to God. If something is on your mind, if there's a situation where you don't know what to do, you can talk to God about it. You don't have to pray in a church, and you don't have to sound religious. God loves you and wants you to be real with him. You can pray out loud. You can pray silently. He listens wherever and whenever. So how do we hear God? God's voice is described in the Bible as a still, small voice. Many people hear back from God by quieting the noise around them and pausing to listen. Or by reading the Bible, which God also calls his Word. The more you talk with someone, the more you get to know who they are. The God who speaks has started the conversation. If you haven't spoken in a while, why don't you try to pick it up again? It could change your life.
There's a voice that tells you what is right. You hear it often. It's unshakable. On the way home, in difficult situations, when you want to give in. Whether or not you choose to listen to it changes your life. Some call it your conscience, a gut feeling, or intuition. It's my voice, the voice of Jesus. It's there when you make a decision. Listen. Your life's destroyed when you choose to sin with what is wrong, and you know it. Ashamed, you ignore my voice and live in pain. But I love you and don't want you to suffer. I took your pain with me on the cross and died to set you free. Listen to my voice. It will save you. Remember, I am always there. Just speak my name.
Come on and shine, shine, shine. Las Vegas, shine your light on me.
You've been watching Las Vegas Tonight with your host, Dale Davidson. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of our show. We so appreciate your loyalty to our program. To keep Las Vegas Tonight on the air, please go to our website, vegassaints.org, and click the Donate button. To send a check or money order, please make it out to Dale Wynn Davidson Ministries and mail it to 9030 West Sahara Avenue, Suite 255, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89117. To suggest a guest to appear on the show or any other suggestions or questions, write to Dale at dalewdavidson@yahoo.com or call him at 702-480-3989.